Have you ever had a moment that forced you to completely rewrite your entire life and not just your habits or your goals, but also who you are, your identity? If you've ever felt stuck in a version of yourself you know you've outgrown, or you're carrying the weight of an old story that no longer serves you, this episode is going to hit home because today's guest rebuilt his life after a devastating motorcycle accident in his early 20s, lost over 100 pounds, rebuilt his mindset, and went on to build and sell multiple seven-figure businesses, all before stepping into the world of high performance leadership coaching. Now he helps founders evolve into real CEOs by blending operating systems with the deep identity work that most leaders avoid. In this conversation, you're going to hear what it really takes to transform, to scale without burning out, and to become the version of yourself that your life and your business actually needs. It's my honor to welcome Angelo Sisco. Welcome, Angelo.
Oh, God, that intro gave me chills. Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Oh man, I appreciate you, and it's a pleasure to have you. I just want to dive right into it, man, because number one, since the moment I met you, you've been nothing short of inspiring and genuine with your time and your energy, and I thank you for that. And I think anybody that listens to this episode is going to get a ton of value from what you bring to the table. But let's just talk a little bit before the transformation and the reinvention of yourself. Like, who were you growing up, and what did life feel like back then compared to now, of course?
Interesting question. What a great question. So I grew up in a small Italian-American suburb. My best friends were Gabriel, Pasquale, and Antonio. I mean, just couldn't get it any more Italian than that, I guess, right? And my
I'm
father,
Ronald Salvatore for the record. So
yeah, so that's just, that's just what I thought life was. I grew up in this world, and my father was in prison from when I was 5 till I was 16, kindergarten till I got a license. And in the world that I grew up in, it wasn't that weird for your dad to be in jail. Like, it wasn't like out of bounds. Like, everybody kind of knew somebody in jail. And I think that really just shaped my life. Honestly, it was, now looking back on it, not having that male father figure, I just rebelled a lot of not great with authority, and just tried to find I guess just trying to find my own way is, what does it mean to be a boy and then a man in this world? And, I grew up around other men that were just big, tough, angry, and mean. And I really believe that that was what a man really stood for. Your only emotions were anger and, a little bit of happiness once in a while, a little bit of joking around, but most of the time you were just pissed off. I grew up around men that were just womenizers and didn't really treat women really well, to be honest with you. And that's just kind of this little existence that I grew up in. It's just a very, I don't like to use that word, but like sort of just extremely alpha, but in not the greatest ways, alpha
sure.
kind of male existence. That's what I really grew up in.
Yeah. And just looking back on that, like what made you, I guess, was there a moment in time that you decided that that wasn't, I guess, for you? Like, what moments really shaped your mindset and identity that you carry now into your adult life?
Yeah, it got to a point where I just looked at all these guys, these men, and realized that none of them were really happy.
Yeah.
I just was like, if this is gonna be my existence, I mean, these guys aren't really enjoying their life. They're pissed off all the time. They're fighting with people all the time. They're in disagreements with their wives. They're just like not embracing all of these parts of lives and not really enjoying it. And also too, they really didn't know how to have fun. I was having this conversation with my buddy the other day, and I said, I love to dance now as an adult, as a 42-year-old man, almost 42 years old. I'd love to go out and dance. But like me growing up and dancing as a kid, that was like, no way. You would never. Like, I would go to the kid dances and you would just be standing there looking at everybody,
Uh-huh.
And like, I grew up in this world where like you weren't allowed to be kind of free spirited and have fun. You had to fit this way. You know the deal, dude. Leather jackets,
Uh-huh.
just grease backed hair when I had it, the whole game. And I just looked at these guys and was like, man, you guys aren't having so much, that much fun. And I'm so grateful as I got older and built my businesses. One of the first things I did was I just started traveling. And I always I feel like a lot of my childhood too was like a Bruce Springsteen song. I couldn't wait to get out of my little town, and see what this world is. And the more I traveled and ventured off and met other people, more I saw like, man, maybe this way of living life isn't the right way. And when I got a little bit older, maybe a little over a decade ago, I met two men from Northern California that really changed my mind about what being a man is. Cause I thought that if I was going to succeed in business, I had to be this taker, animal, just not a kind person to really win in business. And that was just going to be the identity and that we couldn't have fun. And I met these two guys who had a wonderful company, were super successful, and they invited me to a get together in Northern California. And I went there and I was like, wait a minute, we get to have a good time too. We don't have to like be this way all the time, trying to, macho and standoffish. And after I met these guys, I was like, man, I grew up in this culture, very beautiful things about Italian culture, but also
Sure.
too some things that are just, gosh, like very felt like handcuffs. And so
Yeah.
the more I got to travel and see other cultures and other parts of the world, it just let me see different things. Cause I was just in a 1 mile radius my whole life. Childhood vacations were to prisons. Like I didn't do anything that would expose me to other parts of the world till I got older.
Yeah. I kind of share a good amount of that, as you know, growing up.
Yeah, I watched your dad interview. I'm like, dude, this is like me talking to my dad.
Oh, so you watched my father's
Yeah,
interview. You understand.
after we chatted, you were like, dude, just check out my dad interview. I did, and I started watching, and I was like, dude, this is just like a conversation. They even would sit the same way, like
Yeah.
everything about like their body language when
Their
they
whole
sit.
aura and their whole
Yeah,
energy. But it's like you said though, like there's so many incredible lessons that we both got from that
yeah,
type of upbringing. But one thing that I think that was very true is I think for our parents and that generation, that type of mindset, it was a lot coming from that survivalist mindset, right? And then you meet these two gentlemen from Northern California and you realize like, oh my God, like it's not just like dog eat dog, kill or be killed. I could actually build something and also have fun while doing it and enjoy the other pieces of my life and as well and grow those other pieces because I'm not doing it from a standpoint of survival. I'm doing it because the way I view success is different. So like, I guess what were the two biggest lessons you got from that traveling and those two gentlemen in terms of like, what did success really mean? And what did you start chasing once that opened up for you?
Phew. Man, you ask great questions, buddy. No wonder you do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I met these 2 guys and I just saw that like we would go out and we would dance and like no one would judge you and you could just have fun and like not be on guard all the time. Like that was the biggest thing is like if I went into a place or anywhere I didn't know, like I was on guard, like in this sort of mafioso prison kind of mentality that I grew up in. It was like, who are these people, new people? We got to watch out for this. We're unsafe.
Security. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Be a
all of
threat.
that. Oh, and, like, I was like, "Man, we don't have to be like this," and it felt I spent 3 days with these guys, and it felt so good. It just felt so relaxing, and I was just like, "Dude, we got it wrong." And so, like, that was the first thing is having a true sense of your own self and not worrying so much about other people. Like, later I realized that all these guys that were like this were just completely insecure. Like, that was the issue. They just couldn't be themselves because they were worried about what other people thought of them. And the older I've gotten, the more I've been able to really like let that go. Like, first of all, no one gives a shit about you the way we all make it up in our heads. Like no one's going home going, "Oh, that guy Angelo, he likes to go dance with his wife. What a loser." Yeah, no one cares. Like no one cares. But like, me growing up in my teens and my 20s, I thought everyone cared about what I did and had to put up this huge image of what hold up this image, should I say, of like who I was and what people would think of me. And that is just such a heavy existence. It's just
Did you feel like that a lot of that you had to that did you feel like you had to be kind of on stage, like you had to perform up to other people's expectations a good bit too? Was that it as well? Like there was other people that were saying like you need to do this, you need to live life a certain type of way, or else you're not successful. Did that happen to you at all?
Yeah, so my dad was gone and I wound up working at this deli in my neighborhood and this man had a son who was maybe what is he about 12 years my senior And I thought he was the coolest guy ever. Like, if you watch the Bronx Tale, he was totally like my Sonny. I thought he
It
was
was funny.
just,
You were his
yeah,
cologne.
yeah. I just thought anything he asked me to do, anything like that, I just thought he was the coolest guy ever. And he was very much like that. I mean, he's a wonderful man, but like there was all of that layering in his life, and you could just tell like it just started to wear on him after a while, and still probably does in some ways. But
Mhm.
it was just, yeah, I just saw that, like, this is the behavior that was modeled in front of me, and these were the people that had the nice cars, had the hot chicks, had everything that money, everything that I thought meant success. I thought this was it, so I had to act that way in order for me to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, by the way, also, something I share with you is that deli life. I also worked in a deli
Yeah,
like, in my neighborhood growing up with somebody I went to school with. Didn't have a Sonny there,
yeah,
a Sonny type of individual. But you raised such a great point, right? Like how people define success. And even especially nowadays, I was just talking about this on it with another guest that I had on the show. And I was saying how so many people look at like social media, for example, and see cars and jets and houses and certain lifestyles, but what they tend to miss is how much of that is really curated, number one. And then number two, it's not really how success is defined. If you're healthy, you got your health, you got your family, you got your loved ones, you have a roof over your head, you can pay your bills. Like at the core of that, of course we want to strive for more, but at the core of that, if you don't have those things, all those other things on the outside are literally just material, shiny stuff. You know what I mean?
for sure, for sure.
And how old were you at this point? Like, were you in your late teens, early 20s?
Uh, at what point when I was looking
Af
up to that guy?
Yeah, when you were talking about the guy at the deli.
Yeah, like late teens, all through high school, into college, like all of that time, just thought that that was it.
That was success, yeah, for sure. And then, as somebody who, also has had a, pretty intense motorcycle accident, I got into a, motorcycle accident when I was 22. I got hit by a dump truck on a 250 Ninja, and I fractured, L1 and L2 in my lower back. I know that that was a very defining moment in your life, and I had bikes in my life since I was a kid with my father. But take us back to that moment because it sounds like that was like a transformative moment. Like, what happened the day of the accident for you, and what did that immediate aftermath kind of look like? Physically, mentally, and even emotionally.
Yeah, totally. Dude, it's so interesting. Such a parallel story. So I got a motorcycle because my dad liked motorcycles, and I was like, this is how I'm gonna bond with my dad. We're gonna go on motorcycle rides. And I bought a Kawasaki Vulcan 1600 classic, like a big cruiser bike, and it was a 1600, so it went fast. Like it
Oh
was
yeah.
like all over the place, you know? And so I'm driving to a birthday party at my aunt's house. I get off the highway and I have a green light to start merging onto the street from the highway. And a landscaping truck, I really believe, thought that they were going to make the light, and they ran through it and they clipped the left side of my body. And I didn't go unconscious. And so immediately I stood up, and I was with my sister's fiance at the time. And I stood up right away in shock, kind of. And I, my foot was flipped the wrong way. My left foot was flipped, this way, and I'm facing forward. And at first I just was like, what's going on? And then I looked down and I fell to the ground, and I was like banging my foot on the ground, like trying to like feel it because I thought I was numb.
Mhm.
And I'm just laying there, and gosh, I'll never forget this. My sister's fiance, he was hysterical. He was crying and like all over the place. I had to calm him down. My phone was broke. I had one of those little Nokia ones where I used to play Snake on,
Mhm.
one of
Yup,
those.
yup.
All right. So I had a little phone and it was
I'm old
broke.
enough for that.
Yeah, it was broke. So I had to go, okay, listen, it's okay. Call my aunt's house. My aunt's house didn't answer. I go, okay, great. Call my dad. So they called 911 right away. And then I just started calling like the other people. And then I remember getting in the ambulance, and we weren't far from the party, maybe about a half a mile. So my dad shows up, and my dad is just angry, right? He thinks the people that called 911 are the people that hit me. He's trying to fight them. I'm like, dude, they're not even the right people. So they throw me in the car. And because it was, they had to take me to a hospital that was a little farther away because of the severity of this accident. And I go in there and my foot's flipped the wrong way. And my pinky finger, you could kind of see it. I don't have all my pinky finger like
Hey,
this break the ground. And so I still remember this. I'm sitting there in the hospital and they had to chop it off what was left and just sew it back together. I remember watching TV while they did it. And that began like a 2 month span in the hospital. I think I was home like maybe 5 or 6 days inside of 2 months. It had a bunch of swelling. I got a skin graft. I have 10 screws in a plate. They did a surgery called a flap, and I have about a foot scar on my stomach. They tried to take out stomach tissue and put it on my ankle. That was Thanksgiving. I'll never forget that. That was Thanksgiving. I had probably had like 5 or 6 surgeries in those few months, but that was Thanksgiving. I wound up having a blood clot. I was in ICU. It was a complete waste of the surgery. Um, and so I wound up with a skin graft on my calf. I have like on my left calf, you could see if you ever see it, it's like I got a hole there. And then the top of my top of my foot looks like a piece of salami. Honestly, I don't know how to say it another way. And then so I have all of that. And then that was about 2 months in the hospital. I got out after Christmas. I spent Christmas at the hospital that year. And it was miserable. I remember being there and just being so miserable and just watching movies all the time. And just the only thing is like my dad would give the nurses and the people on the floor money so I wouldn't have people in my room. I didn't want to share a room with any guests. I just wanted to be by myself. And so we just spent 2 months there. And then I got out and then I had like 5 months of rehab and trying to learn to walk again. And during that time, I just didn't, my identity of who I was, I didn't know what I was going to do. I wound up not going back to college because I was just failing those classes because I wasn't showing up and just didn't have any idea of what I was going to do. And then about a year later into this process, my parents got divorced and I didn't understand love, the complexities of love, right? I just thought my dad went to jail, my mom stayed with him. Once he came home, I was going to have this fairy tale life once again. And I didn't realize that if I spent a decade without my wife, shit, even 2 years without my wife, we'd probably be different people. And my dad came home from prison. My mom wound up becoming this career woman. It was just they didn't jive. And my dad and my mom got a divorce. And when that happened, I really lost another sense of myself. I had no idea where I was. Like this accident, then my parents got divorced. I was mad at my dad for divorcing my mom. It was just a brutal time. And at that time, I didn't have the language or the capabilities to really communicate how pissed off and sad I was and how disappointed I was. And so my answer was to go eat. I laugh all the time. I used to go to McDonald's and here was my McDonald's order. This is the 100% truth. And it's so, let me just go through it and you could tell it's not a lie. Okay. I
yeah.
used to get, I used to get a 20-piece nugget, a double quarter pounder with cheese, 2 large fries, and I used to get a Diet Coke. I had no idea why I would even get a Diet Coke. What's the difference? But that's how you know it wasn't a lie because I was getting a Diet Coke.
Maybe flavor.
Yeah. Okay. And I would just eat. Like I would just sit on the recliner and I would eat. I really didn't know where I was going or what I was going to be. And in 2008, I watched the movie 300. And I watched the movie 300 and I was like, dude, how did these guys get so jacked? Like all of these guys in there were like, but they weren't even just jacked. They were all really athletic too. They were
Yeah.
moving around. And I was like, man, how did these guys get in shape? And I just went on my computer one day and found out that they worked out at this gym in Utah called Jim Jones and that they trained this methodology called CrossFit. I started watching these CrossFit videos and I watched this video of a guy doing a workout called King Kong. And this guy was like 185 pounds and it's 3 rounds, one deadlift at 405 pounds, 2 muscle ups, like coming up and over rings, 3 squat cleans, like when you bring it under and you stand up at like
Yep.
250, and then 4 handstand pushups, like you kick up on the wall and do these handstand pushups. And this guy did this under like 3 minutes. And I
Yeah.
was like, I need to figure out how to do this. And that's how like that at watching that was like the moment where I was like, things are going to be different now.
You know, you went to the only thing that was, I guess, kind of like a comfort thing. Like the food was kind of like a medicine for what you were going through at
Yeah.
that time. And then it wasn't until I guess you saw Jim Jones and those the athletes that you were watching that kind of made you have that realization? So like, I know that you lost over 100 pounds and rebuilt your mindset and ultimately reinvented your life, but like, was that watching 300? Was that the moment that you said, or watching those guys in the gym? Was that the moment that you said, like, I just can't live like this anymore?
Yeah. So when my dad went to prison, he was 400 pounds and he came out of prison. He was 200 pounds. He lost half his body. Okay.
Wow.
And I struggled with my weight my entire life. And my dad, when he was a kid, he was overweight and was very teased and things like that. And so there was so much in my consciousness about being overweight is bad. And then I mean, it really is. I mean, let's be honest, it's not
Sure.
like it's a bad thing to think about. But I just thought like that was the worst thing like for me to be was just overweight. And so when I after all of those years of fluctuating with my weight and then getting up that big, I just thought if I was able to lose weight, I would be different, feel different. And so that's how I pursued it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely, I'm sure once you started feeling different, you're like, there's no way I'm ever going to go back to that older life. What part of yourself, I guess, was there a part of yourself that you had to kind of let go of? And was there something that you were fighting to kind of claim, like at that moment? Like, was there something that you were trying to prove to yourself at the same time?
Yeah. Oh gosh, what a great question. I remember this like yesterday. Just I could have a visceral feeling just thinking about it. So my first CrossFit workout was January 5th, 2009. I did it by myself and I did this workout. I had to run a mile and it was like try to do, not try to do, but do pull-ups. I couldn't do pull-ups, right? And I did a few push-ups and some sit-ups. And at the very end of this like baseline test that I found to do, it had 1 minute of burpees. And I was so out of shape and just so beat up. I think I did 3 burpees in a minute, which was basically just like falling on the floor and flailing to get up. I was so out of shape. And I walked home from the gym that day and I was just crying to myself at how like terrible this has all gotten. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to make myself proud. I still remember this, like I was going to come back. And I remember making that choice, almost like in those Rocky movies, like when Adrian says, like, go win and the training montage turns on. It felt like that for me. And then I just started focusing on my nutrition. I would bring food everywhere. I didn't care like what it meant to like sacrifice or anything like that. And I lost 100 pounds in 7 months.
That's incredible. And just the mental fortitude to decide to say, okay, I'm going to make that switch. For me, one of those times definitely happened to me in boxing a good bit, from getting my ass kicked in sparring to eventually winning golden gloves. But learning those lessons and deciding to continue, but also in my education. I didn't really apply myself at school that much through my associates, and I was an average student in high school. And I left with my associates with only like a 1.9 GPA. So like I graduated with my associates by the skin of my teeth. And I
Right.
remember being in Trattoria Ravello. I was waiting tables. I remember I said I have to finish my bachelor's. I'll be one of the first people in my family to go all the way through college. And I applied to a couple of colleges and I got denied by a bunch. And then I got into West Virginia University. I remember reading the acceptance letter on my phone in the bathroom of the restaurant, just crying to myself in the bathroom, just being like, how did I let it get to this point? But you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to turn this whole thing around because I'm better than that. I just wasn't applying myself. And it sounds like for you, it was kind of that aha moment of saying like, I could really do this and I can live a life that's going to be uh, way more beneficial to me and what I'm looking to achieve.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah, and for like I guess people that are stuck in that, older version of themselves, somewhere that they don't want to be, like what do you think's one thing that they need to hear that could like really spark their rewrite? Is there something that they need to hear or something that they maybe need to do to start to change what their one chapter they're writing?
Every time you're feeling anxiety or you're feeling depressed or you're feeling mad or thinking all of that, you're in a state of thinking and you're not in an act of doing. And I think that most people, including myself, get caught up in these thought loops when in reality, everything gets solved by doing something. And even if you're doing the wrong something, you're going to find out a lot more and a lot quicker if you're just doing things. So stop thinking and start doing, and you will get where you really are supposed to go or you're meant to go.
Yeah, because no matter what from that doing, you're either gonna learn because you solved what you were looking to solve, or you're gonna learn because you failed, and hopefully you take that as a lesson and not a failure, because it's not the end. If you fail, it's just an opportunity to learn. And if you start reframing in your brain, like you had said, like you start reframing challenges as opportunities almost, you kind of have the opportunity to write your own story, right? Because you're not allowing your thoughts to supersede your actions. You're allowing your actions to point towards where you're looking to go. It sounds like was super beneficial for you, especially in your transformation.
For sure. When I'm doing stuff, I'm out of my head, and that's a good place to be.
I like that a lot. Now, you obviously did that transformation for yourself, but it's one thing to do that for yourself, and then another whole thing to turn it into a business, right? So, like, walk
Yeah.
me through your fitness career. Like, how did you go from now personal transformation to building a high performing fitness business? With O'Hare CrossFit, because it's one thing to do it for yourself, and a whole nother thing to say, I'm going to turn this into a business. Was it because, I guess, of the impact that it had on your life that you decided that you wanted to open something for yourself?
Yeah, it didn't happen right away. So around, let's just say, so January I started, by July I lost 100 pounds. It was probably around April or May, people saw that I lost a lot of weight and was like, just had a different energy. And so just people in my neighborhood would be like, "Hey, can we go work out together? I think it would be really, motivating for me to have somebody like you." And I was like, "Sure." And so I would just go work out with like random people that I knew. And every time I got done, I would just feel so good. And so I said to myself, I said, "Man, why can't this be my career? Like, why can't I do this?" And so I took out my phone, and I had a Palm Pilot by then. I'm just going through phone evolution. I had a Palm
Upgrading.
Pilot. Yeah, a Palm Pilot by then. And I sent a message out to everybody that I'm training people at a local park, and if anybody would want me to help them, I would love to do it. And I just wanted to get 10 clients that July. I remember I said, if I get 10 clients, I had another business at the time. I was like, if I could get 10 clients, this would be great. And so I got 10 people. I had some medicine balls and some bands and like some stuff. I got some off Craigslist, and I started training people for a few months there. I live in Chicago, so it got cold really quick. And then it was around September of that year, I was like, okay, we can't keep doing this outside. And, if it rained or anything, I wouldn't be able to work with people. And so I took a racquetball court space inside of a local like village hall
Mhm.
and rented it out for like $200 a month, and was like, man, if I could turn this into a little gym, I'll just train people here. And I started working with people one to one, up to three people on one, in my little studio, and was working with people, and it was great. And I did that for about 10 months. And then after 10 months, I just started looking at like, I didn't want to take off for all these federal holidays. I didn't want to close at a certain time. I didn't want to open at a certain time. I have this thing inside me. I like being invited, but I hate being told what to do.
Mhm.
Just drives me crazy. And I was like, man, I have enough money now. This is how much I could afford for rent and stuff like that. Let me go and open a gym. And so November 11th of 2010, I opened my first gym. It was 2,500 square feet, this gym. And I opened O'Hare CrossFit that day.
Wow. Wow. So, and again, another parallel for you and I is like, my dad and I built a 12 by 12 boxing ring in my basement.
It's awesome.
And I started, coaching people, holding hand pads for them. And one of the things I absolutely love that I know that you'll resonate with is watching people go through those learning curves and those aha moments, and then
Yeah.
seeing them develop that confidence and that transformation. And it's almost like, as good as it is for them, it's even better for us, especially like from the service
Yeah.
side of things, because it fuels you, right? And I feel like, was that a big part of what kept you going to decide that, say, hey, like, people really love this and I love helping them achieve their fitness goals. And I know what it did for me, because that's
Mhm.
how I felt for boxing. It completely changed my life. And I never uh, pictured myself to ever be in that world.
Yeah, totally. I looked at fitness the same way I look at business now. It's all a self-actualization exercise. It's all just you going through your shit, trying to improve yourself. And the more that you focus on that and you develop discipline and you start seeing who you are when you're like that, it's just a incredible feeling personally. And for me to play that part in people's lives, it was just so fulfilling. I felt like so good about how I was making money. It felt great.
Yeah, it definitely is. But then it's another thing also to turn your passion into a business. And it's not something that everybody can do, because there's definitely some learning curves that come along, obviously with being an entrepreneur. So like, what are like, I guess the first major learning curves that you went through with this, with this first business with O'Hare, and what did it teach you about, I guess, leadership, people, and culture, and the limits, I guess, of hustle?
Yeah, so I opened up the gym. It was like the end of 2011. I opened this gym up, right? And everybody was like, "What are you doing? What is this hobby?" And they thought it was all a joke. And around 6 to 8 months into this, I was watching some guy on CrossFit because they used to put out a lot of content about other gyms and stuff. And there was this guy who was in Milford, Connecticut. His name was Jason Leiden, and he had a really busy gym and he was training a lot of athletes and they were doing videos about him. And I reached out to him one time, and I think I did it through Facebook at first. And I was like, "Listen, do you train other people in other states?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we got on a Skype call. I mean, that's all there was back then. There wasn't Zoom or any of this fancy stuff. So we got on a Skype call, and I just felt like this guy knew what I really wanted to do. So I had him start just writing me workouts, and I would just email him and ask him so many questions about like workouts and stuff like that. Cause I thought if I got people the best results, I would have the most successful gym. That's all I focused on. And I thought if I knew how to write workouts and help people with their nutrition, it would be great. And so a few months after we started working together, Jason invited me to Milford. And at the time, Ron, I didn't really have the money. I didn't have money to like fly to Connecticut. I was barely making a living what I was doing now. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. And so I flew to LaGuardia, rented a car, and I would sleep in like truck stops outside there. And I would just wake up in the morning. I would go work with him all day. And then like I would go in his office. And when he would walk outside of his office, I would take my phone and just take pictures of every single book that he had on his bookshelf. Cause I was like, if I could read everything he knows, I will know what he knows. And I would just make trips probably every 3 or 4 months out to Connecticut. It was the only time I ever left my gym. I never gave like had an excuse. And like the people then I would program like the easiest workouts on Saturdays and Sundays just when I was gone because I knew that anybody could really coach those workouts. They'd be like the workouts where they weren't technical, you couldn't get hurt. And then I would go to Connecticut, and every single time I would come there, I would just learn a little something. Oh, this is how you do contracts. This is how you bring people in your gym. This is how you market. This is what your classes look like. Like I would just sit there with a notebook. I remember this and just watch his classes and write down the structure. And I would go, cool. And so I just came back and was like, "Oh, I'm going to make the CrossFit Milford in O'Hare CrossFit." I was going to do everything he did, and I started just implementing all that stuff. And by the end of 2012, we were busting out of the seams, and I went from 2,500 square feet to 5,500 square feet in a facility, and we just were growing like crazy. And so for me, finding somebody that had already did it and just soak up everything that I possibly could from him. And he took such a great liking to me, Jason. I mean, just adore that man for all the time that he spent with me. But I just was such an eager, fun student. I think he really enjoyed just having somebody that cared so much. And that's what really put me into a different trajectory was finding him.
I think that when you also, right, like you compare to even like your childhood and how you grew up, and the two people that you met from California, now you have Jason,
Yeah.
who's also showing you a path, right? Like there was an opportunity for you not to reinvent the wheel, but take a lot of the strategies that he had been sharing with you, and that you were being a great student with understanding and writing down, and taking them to heart back to your business,
Yeah.
ultimately to help it grow. And what with working with the public and working with people, like what were some of the things would you say made up the culture at O'Hare Fitness? What were some of the things that you think people really loved about that first business that you grew?
Oh gosh, we could laugh about this, but I was such a stickler for the rules. Like I'll tell you the truth, buddy. Like if you came late for a class, like there was like, I took the air out of the room that how you could come late and disrespect all these other people that made it on time. And I would even go as far as like, if you missed a few classes and didn't think it was a big deal, I would kick you out in front of everybody.
Mhm.
I would go, you know what? I don't need your money. By the time you get to your car, you will be refunded. I promise you. Get the out of here. And I
And
would throw people out. And it was just such a cultish feeling, especially because at that time, CrossFit was so new. So, like, there wasn't all these other gyms around me doing this at the time. There was no other CrossFits. And so, like, I was creating this identity of what it was around me, around my area. And yeah, I was just such a stickler that we were going to do things right. And if you were going to show up here, you were going to show up on time and you were going to be really disciplined, like almost very militant, but people really took to it in a way where, like, I think it happens to everybody if you go to the military. I've never been, but like, you at first you might not like it, but then after you start following these rules and you have discipline and you have order, you start feeling better about yourself. You start feeling more certainty in your life. And so that's how I really built it. It was extreme micromanagement, militant, bell to bell. I was there, but that's what it took to get it going. So we did it that way.
yeah, and also, like you said, like the people that want that, we always say in our business, like we're looking for the people that are looking and people that genuinely want that, even if they don't know it right away.
Yeah.
They now all of a sudden it becomes that community, and anybody that doesn't jive in that community, it's like they immediately get expelled from it, and nobody has a problem with doing that, right? Because
Yeah.
it would just bring down everybody else. So having that right type of energy and you being the curator of that energy definitely sounds like it led to a lot of the growth of O'Hare. Now, you also mentioned in the past, I've heard you say that, being a founder, being a CEO are two very also different identities. Like, when did you personally learn that difference? Like, and what does that mean?
So what it means, I'll tell you that first, and then I'll tell you the story. A founder is a person that is obsessed with control and having their hands in everything and just thinks that they're the star player on their team and also has an ego that needs to feed that story. And so it was 2014. And so 2014 comes, and this is the year that more group-based fitness was coming out. There was more competitors in this boutique fitness world, right? There was more people out there. And that year, I laugh when I say this story because it's so naive to business. But that year, I only grew 25%. Before that, Ron, like I was like 83%, 275% growth. Like I had this astronomical growth trajectory for those few years after I met Jason. And 2014 comes, I only grow 25%. And I'm so frustrated and angry. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I thought it was like the worst thing in the world. And I didn't realize this at the time, but like I would be real mean to my employees. Like I would blame them for this. And then I would blame my customers for not referring as many people to me. Like I just kept like going down this spiral and I kept trying new things. We got to change this. We got to change that. We got to do it like this. And then one day I don't recall how I stumbled on it. And just maybe through research, but I read a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. So I read something where like EQ is more important than IQ. And at the time I was like, I don't know, but I'm going to read this book and I'm going to find out if this is true. And they have a test. I'll never forget this. They have a test for you to take. And I scored very low on self-awareness and I scored even lower on self-management. Like I didn't know how to like manage myself and my emotions. Like I scored very low on those scores. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to beat these scores and get better at it. And I started working on myself. And then I was like, oh man, like just the same thing with Jason. I need to be around more people. Like for me, Ron, the first, anytime I have a problem in my life, the first question I ask myself is not how I could figure this out or what I need to do to figure this out, is that who could help me? I'm a who person. I think everybody has a gear when they have a problem. But for me, it's who could help me? Who can I learn from? Who could figure this out for me? That's my first thought. And so I started reading this emotional intelligence and I was like, okay, who do I need to be around so I could be more like this? And I found this fitness mastermind at the time that was really popular. I filled out this application, and you paid 5 grand for like 4 days to go to San Diego. The first event was in San Diego, and meet these entrepreneurs and everything, and that were really successful in fitness. And I went there all by myself. I was so nervous to go there. And I went there, and there was people that were ahead of me, but there was also people that were behind me. And for the whole time that I was running my business, I never talked to anybody. I was in this little bubble. And so I thought that I was just dead last. Like, that was my story, that I was dead last. And I met these people, and I was like, wow, these guys are really smart. And I met, back to that story of those guys I met in Northern California, I met one of them on their first thing. And I was like, okay, I think this is great. And I came back, and they invited me to be a part of it for the whole year. And the whole year was another $20,000. And I didn't have the 20 grand at that time in 2015. I didn't have the 20 grand at the time, but I was like, you know what? You put me in a room with these people. I'm going to soak up everything I possibly can, and I'm going to figure out how to get my return on my money. So I threw it on my Amex, because that was like, no, no limit. They just let you do whatever you want over there sometimes. And so
Yeah.
I threw it on there, and I was a part of this mastermind for a year. And every month we'd have calls, and every quarter we'd get together. And I started networking with other people. I started learning a bunch of stuff. And that's what really started opening my eyes to more things, because, I, back to what my real frustration was, back to that original story, is I thought, okay, here you go, Angelo, you went in this accident, you didn't graduate from college. If I could make over 100 grand a year, I wouldn't be a loser. Like, that was my thing. And then by the time 2014 came, we were making well over 100 grand. And I was like, why am I still unhappy? Why do I still feel like a loser? And then I just kept like learning more about myself. I joined that mastermind with all these smart people, started learning about what they did to kind of break through their stuff. And that was the real catalyst for me to hold up a mirror and start looking at all of these things that I believed life was, and why I even believed any of them. Because before that, I just thought they were all just truths, laws of my life and how to govern myself. And that's what really shifted me in my life, joining that mastermind and meeting really smart people.
And the stories that we tell ourselves, right? Like we always say, the 6 inch space in between your ears could be a minefield of doubt, despair, and I can't do it, and other people are better than me, or it could be the most fertile soil that you plant excellent ideas in, or even the narrative that you tell yourself. Like Brian Tracy, I'm sure you're familiar with, change your thinking, change your life. And, we all have that screen of belief in our heads that we filter information through, and then we decide if it's good or bad. It's not good or bad until we decide it is. So
Yep.
like, if you're telling yourself a story that, you're not capable, or I'm dead last, that's going to manifest in your reality, because your actions are now going to follow that story.
Yep.
So your ability to now go and soak up all that information, become a sponge, become a great student, allowed you to shift, it sounds like, your mindset really, and go from not just somebody who built a business, but somebody that now could take that information and amplify it across maybe all different types of verticals in your life, right? Because you were able to change the story that was happening.
For sure. I came back from that mastermind. During that year in that mastermind, I opened another gym. A year later, I launched a nutrition coaching company, then an online programming company for people who wanted to like compete in CrossFit. And that notoriety, I started getting a lot of notoriety inside of this CrossFit world. And then gym owners were reaching out to me for business advice and how to like do all this stuff. And that's what got me into business coaching. People just were reaching out to me, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to help you. And then I wound up starting a company with somebody I met in that mastermind, because they had like a huge marketing arm. And I wound up working with 400 gyms around the world inside of this company. I had 8 coaches with us. It was an incredible time. And so like, yeah, that's how I always laugh at myself. That's how I really got the ROI on the investment. But then also too, I made these incredible relationships that I still have today.
And it's so funny because people look for the instant gratification piece when they go and do things, and they don't realize that a lot of times the success is going to compound over time. It's going to compound in ways that you're not even going to recognize. They look at the dollars and cents, but the relationships, the ideas, the narrative, all these different things that become so important. And now today, Angelo, you coach founders and focus really on involving their thoughts and I guess and
Yeah.
helping them shift to be able to create this, like, I guess, fixing that internal identity and of course fixing the systems. But like, why is fixing that identity so important, as well as fixing the systems? Because I'm sure you can't really fix the systems when you're working with CEOs or founders before you help them fix that identity piece. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 100%. So, just for like the sake of this discussion, your identity is a sum of your beliefs and stories that you tell yourself and ultimately governs how you view the world and what you believe the world is. And a lot of times people focus on their actions and their habits. And one of the things that I like to do is I have this formula called identity alchemy. It's your thoughts create your words dictate your actions repeated create your habits, and your habits create your identity. And a lot of us are focused on actions and habits, but we don't think about our thoughts and our words. And so I spend a lot of time unpacking these stories and how we're viewing ourselves and what we're making things mean about ourselves, because that's what's really the driver of our actions. And a lot of people are just starting with the actions. And so, back to this founder to CEO, you built this business, it makes a few $1,000,000 a year. You're really excited, you're making some real money for the first time in your life, and you think you're the man, and your business is now at a plateau because of this thinking. And the hardest thing for people to realize, these founders to realize, is this thinking that got you to this point served you, but will no longer serve you to get you where you really want to go. And so I could come in that business and implement a business operating system and come up with this amazing strategy and all that stuff. But the moment I leave, that default identity setting that you have is going to screw it all up because you are not that person. It's just like when you hear stories about people that win the lottery and they go broke. What's the problem? They have an identity of a poor person.
Hmm. Is that the when you're working with CEOs and founders, is that like where you start? Is that the first thing you look for? Is that identity piece?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was on a call with a guy yesterday, and the same thing he said. I want you to come in and implement this and implement that. And the more I just started talking to him, I said, this sounds like a great idea, but I need 2 months just with you first. And he's like, why? He's a little insulted. And like, that's the hardest part is there's this ego because you're like, why? I'm the man. Why would I need this or whatever you want to say? Like, I'm successful. But if you want to run a eight-figure company or higher, you need to be a different person than you are right now, because the hardest thing to accept, but it's the truth. If you are the person that could already run an eight-figure company, your company would already be at eight figures.
Mm.
That's like the thing. Like, you want to run a 10, 20, $30 million business. If you already had the tools, if you were already that person, you would have already done it.
So is that like the biggest gap, I guess, you see where leaders say they want to go and how they actually operate?
Yeah, there's just they're out of integrity. I try to say that in the most kindest way possible, but they're out of integrity with they're out of integrity with the words and the wants that they have from their person and their actions that they're exhibiting.
Yeah, and oftentimes I'm sure that they're also leading people, and that's bleeding into, of course, bleeding into the business, or else they would be where they want to be. But it's also affecting the people that they lead. So, like, what's one of the biggest, I guess, leadership lessons that took maybe you some time to understand, but that now shapes what you teach to these founders and CEOs?
Yeah, great question. Your ego, my ego too, doesn't understand this. Like, we say we want to hire smart people, but we're in that finder sort of egotistical mindset. What we really hire is yes men and yes women and people that just agree to what we say and nod their heads because that sense of control feels really good. And then we have these doers, and then we're mad that they're just doers, but we're also kind of getting off on the fact that they still need us and they don't challenge us, and we're still this, on a pedestal inside of our companies. And it's just all wrapped up in control and being a doer and all of that stuff. Like, there's a point where, people are so great at what they do, they're like Michael Jordan, but in order for them to be a CEO, they got to become Phil Jackson.
Yeah, they get so wrapped up in being, like you just said, the doer, and then they become their own bottleneck. for their business, essentially, where if they're able to delegate, and like, you know, in traction, like the EOS system and Gino Wickman, I think it's chapter 2, he talks about letting go of the vine.
Yep.
And if you're able to do that, you know, you're going to see a significant impact in your business, as long as you empower the right people and you've done a good job of finding the right people and in the right seats. Right.
Totally.
Yeah. And then, like, you know, again, I know that you're a Vistage chair. Can you explain a little bit about what that is exactly?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what Vistage is a monthly meeting. It's a full day meeting with founders and CEOs and presidents, anybody that's a high performing executive that has P&L responsibilities. And we come together once a month, about 10 to 15 of us, and they're not competing industries. So there's not your direct competition there. And what we do is we share best practices, we unpack issues, we kind of connect and network for each other to see where we can help each other. And it's really a place where a founder or CEO it's a lonely position. Let's just be honest. It's a lonely position to have. And it's a chance for them to be around people that understand them and have the same context about what they're really going through, right? Like a lot of people are CEOs and founders and they have these problems. And if they told some regular decular, they told their wife or husband, they'd come home and they would be like, why is that even a problem? Why does that even matter? You know? But there's this place where they could come together and really share these sort of things. We bring in subject matter experts every other month for them to have workshops so they could keep learning new things and developing their programs. And so once a month, I have the pleasure of hosting a meeting with these amazing people. I work with them one-on-one as well inside of that Vistage system. And it's just a wonderful place where people could have a sense of community and a sense of not being alone and a sense of not feeling like they're crazy, really learn a lot, but also too a place where they could be really vulnerable with what they're going through, because it's not like a CEO who has this problem could go up to one of the people that works for them and go, listen, I got to tell you what's going on with me today. Like that doesn't work. That's not how it is. And so it's a place for them to have it. And once a month, it's a little oasis where they could get out of working in the business and work on it.
I love that. And to just give people a taste, Angelo, of more of what you do, you've definitely provided a lot of information on it already. But like, if you were to be an entrepreneur, let's just say, who is a founder or is working towards, let's just say somebody maybe is looking to burn the boats and move into entrepreneurship, or the one that might be actually stuck as that founder and not able to let go of the vine, what would you say is the most immediate, like, mindset rewrite or system rewrite that immediately shifts their trajectory in their business or their life? What is that first thing that you usually take them through as a coach in your system?
Getting them to a place where no matter what the situation is, however you want to label it, good or bad, otherwise, that they are 100% responsible for what this looks like. I think that if you cannot take responsibility for where your situation is and then you just fully accept it, you could never really make any sort of change, any sort of real transformation. And anytime someone is in that state of not taking responsibility and being in denial, they're being a victim. And no one wants to raise their hand and say they're being a victim, but that's really what it is at the end of the day. And so for me, anybody that's listening to this or watching this, if there is something in your life that you are unsatisfied with and that you are just throwing your hands up like you don't have the power to change it, just focus on taking responsibility for it. Because even if it wasn't 100% your fault in reality, you played a part in the reality of what it is like, no matter what, complacency, not knowing what it is or anything like that. And once you take responsibility, at first, it feels like you're chewing nails, but when you swallow it, it feels like you're swallowing ice cream. It's the best feeling ever.
Yeah, and that's why I would say, like, your work really helps leaders evolve into the version of themselves that their business actually needs, not who they think they need, right?
Yeah. You know,
And
when you really sit down to it, Ron, it's like this is really who they want to become, but there is a story, a limiting belief, or something, even believing that they can really do it or even be worthy of it, that is stopping them. And I think once you get rid of that, your business will reflect whatever mindset that is there.
when you think of your own story in relation to the mission of what you do with helping founders, like what do you hope that people even listening, what do you hope that they take in terms of like the purpose that they built in their life? Or if they're looking to rewrite their identity, like what's the one thing that you hope that they take away from your story as it relates to this?
The definition of success, at least the definition of success that I grew up in and many people still have, is really outdated. And I really believe that success is a trifecta, it's a triangle. I think you should be kicking ass in business. I think you should be making a ton of money, but not at the expense of not taking care of your physical and mental and spiritual health, and not at the expense of not tending to your key relationships in your life. That's a big triangle. And I think that we are redefining success in our generation. And the more we can let go of that, sorry if anybody is, but that baby boomer, ruthless Gordon Gekko way of success, the more happy and the more fulfilled you're really going to be. Because I have met too many people that have just built a great business, not taking care of their health. All that money they're spending on doctor care, and or they have a bunch of divorces and their kids don't want to talk to them. And if that's your definition of success, mazel tov, go get it. But for me and the people that I'm working with, it's the trifecta. It's all of them. Why can't we have all of it? Don't believe that. That's just a story that you're telling yourself that you can't have it. It's all there and it takes work, but it's all worth it.
I absolutely love that. And I think that there's a spiritual awakening, and this is a whole nother conversation you and I could have offline, but there's
Yeah.
a spiritual awakening I think that people are having of realizing what success really is and how much more it's about the impact and the relationships that you create in your life, and you create for others more than any transaction or business or material object that's out there. Because I think that that's a bad signal. And if you follow that signal for long enough, it's going to be empty at the end versus what you're explaining, where the abundance really lies in that physical health, the mindset, the relationships you have with your people, and the spirituality that you have with, higher connection, higher power. And just connecting that bridge, it sounds like you do a lot of that for a business owner or founder, really to show them what's truly important and help them find purpose, in their life, as well as their business.
Yeah, I just success with soul, and we are on the very early years of a mindful renaissance. That's what I call it. It's the mindful renaissance. And we are just done losing our sense of self for just money. If you're looking around in this world right now, everybody that's leading this world has just sold themselves for the sake of money. I don't care what side you lean on. I'm not getting into that conversation.
Me neither.
But all of these people are just unhappy, and you could see it in everything that they do and everything they say and the way that they treat themselves. It's all their soul saying, I'm not happy. Look at everything else I'm doing to myself. On the outside, it might look great, but look at all these other little things, how I take care of my health, how I tend to my relationships. You could see that it's all soulless. It's just right there in front of you.
Yeah, no question. I want to leave, thank you so much for your time, Angelo. Like, we're coming up on an hour here and I want to be gracious to your time. But I usually ask one question as we're closing out here, which is, I just want you to finish the sentence for me. The world needs more people who.
The world needs more people. Wow, what a great question. I'm just going to go back to what I said. Take 100% responsibility for their lives.
Right. Why do you think that's so important?
Because if I took care of my side of the street, you took care of your side of the street, and everyone watching this and everyone listening took care of their side of the street, this world would be a wonderful place.
No question, man. If somebody, thank you for that response. Cause I totally agree with you, as you probably know by now, as you've probably learned about me. But
Yeah.
if somebody wants to go deeper with your content coaching or leadership work, where should they go first to find you, Angelo?
Yeah, great question. I have my YouTube channel under Angelo Sisco. I post content about this and how I work with people and some frameworks that we use with our clients. And LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn guy. I never thought I would be. And about a year ago, I started writing on LinkedIn, and I really enjoy being on LinkedIn. So either one of those two places is the best place to get at me.
Awesome. I'll be sure to include those links in the description under the video. Any last messages you want to leave the audience?
This was a wonderful time, buddy. I really am so grateful to be able to spend this time with you. It means a lot to me.
Likewise, Angelo. This has been another incredible episode of Great American Underdog, where you can find the courage to act, the resilience to keep going, and the discipline when motivation fades. We'll see you on the next one.